On the issue of spiritual bankruptcy or spiritual poverty, I think it is important for us to acknowledge that a human being is only fully healthy when they are taking care of all the three dimensions of their being, which is the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. So men need to start being a little bit more intentional and active about their spiritual well-being. And it doesn't necessarily mean they need to start going to churches. It doesn't necessarily mean they need to do umqombothi or umcimbi every weekend. What it means is that you need to find time and space to make time for your spiritual well-being. Whether you want to do that through reading or through yoga, but you need to have time where you block away the world and focus on your inner self so that your essence as a human being is not compromised by the circumstances that you find yourself in. And outlets such as church or having a relationship with your ancestors or, going to hiking or doing yoga and a whole lot of other activities that you can do, they help with that. We are not prescribing any specific method. We are just saying men should start being a little bit more deliberate and intentional about their spiritual well-being. Because if you are well in your spirit and in your soul, chances are whatever challenges that you come across in life, you'll be able to deal with them. And on the notion of toxic masculinity, I would like to refer you to a conversation that Tate Obrimashigi had with Vusi on the Jenny Kwantu. I think it's available on YouTube. They were speaking about the idea of masculinity and femininity. So they were trying to explain that every human being, male or female, has got both feminine and masculine energies. So it is a false notion that if you are a man, you are not supposed to cry, you are not supposed to experience certain emotions, you are not supposed to be seen weak. And a good example that they used was to explain that in African spirituality or in African tradition, a male person can be referred to as Ukoko. For example, Ukoko Obrimashiki Saksangoma, who is referred to as Ukoko, even though he's male. And the reason for that is because he was entered by the female spirit, which gives credence to the idea that our energies can be both feminine or masculine, irrespective of our gender. So it's about understanding that you have different energies and they both reside in you. You need to know which energy to use under which circumstances. In other words, there is time to cry, there is time to talk, there is time to sit down and acknowledge whatever pain you are going through. And at the same time, there is time to stand up, there is time to fight, there is time to and I use the word fight loosely, but means that you must be strong in certain situations. But what's important for you to remember is that you don't have to be one or the other. You must embrace both your energies, both the masculine energy and the feminine energy. Because if you are doing that, you are embracing the humanity in you and you are allowing yourself to be a real human being with real emotions, knowing when to express which emotions. So it's very important that we bear that in mind and we don't just embrace the idea that indoda ayikali, a man who cries is weak, a man who cries is a crybaby. That is not true. A human being has to cry at some point. All of us will be visited by situations that demand that we cry. Whether you do it in public or you do it in private, it's besides the point, but you need to acknowledge your emotions so that you don't choke from your own emotions that you did not express and end up expressing those emotions in an unacceptable manner. For example, being violent, beating up your wife or beating up your children at home because you don't express your emotions in a healthy manner. So taking those three dimensions into context, the idea of toxic masculinity, we have to do away with that as African men and as men in general. Social expectations and social conditioning that says we are not worthy unless we have money or we are able to do something. We have to discard that idea. and the notion of spiritual bankruptcy. We need to start paying attention to our spiritual well-being as men. And in order to do all these things, you don't need to be extraordinary or, go to another town or another province. You can just nurture those elements of your being by changing your mindset, number one, and then secondly, making sure that you are surrounded by people who care for you and who support you and who will help you. But thirdly, and most importantly, you as an individual need to make it your responsibility to speak to somebody whenever you are having a difficult time in your life. Whether it's in the form of visiting a psychologist, which I highly recommend, because most men believe that going to a psychologist is a waste of time. But literature shows that people who attend therapy and who speak to professionals tend to do better both in their personal lives and in their careers, because they have an opportunity to speak with themselves through somebody else who guides their thought and who makes sure that they shape how they interact with whatever is happening in their mind and in their world. But you don't only need to go to a psychologist if you need to speak to somebody. You can always speak to your pastor, you can always speak to the social worker, you can speak to a trusted friend, you can speak to your partner, you can even speak to your children, you can speak to anybody that you believe has your best interest at heart and is sensible enough not to give you bad advice. But when all is said and done, the most important part of this conversation is that we must always make it our responsibility to go out there and get help whenever we are in a situation that demands such. And the easiest way to do that is to make it a lifestyle. It must be a lifestyle to have people that you talk to. Life is complicated, life is deep, life is very complex. No one can maneuver life on their own. So you need to make sure that every chance you get, you speak to a professional or you speak to somebody that you trust. Things like izitokfel, zamajida, or having, soccer days with your friends, whatever. Those kind of things, they really help because they keep the conversations going, and when there is a problem, it is not, so that it doesn't become your problem, but it's our problem. And then hopefully when we put our heads together, we can find a solution to whatever we're going through. And as you are aware, whether you are rich or you are famous or whatever the case may be, you will have challenges as well. We know that we've lost quite a number of prominent members of our society to suicide, and those are people that we thought they would never, from where we were standing, we thought they would never commit suicide. But the fact that even people like that commit suicide shows that everybody is struggling and everybody should take mental health seriously. And I would like to end this conversation by saying, rest in peace to everybody who committed suicide. And if for whatever reason you are having suicidal ideation or you are flirting with the idea of suicide, please know that it is normal. However, you need to try and get help, because you flirting with suicide is a sign that you are not coping. And most of us are not coping. That's why we want to normalize the idea of getting help and speaking to somebody so that you can turn a page on whatever situation you are going through. With that said, keep well and take care, and know that we love you, and whatever happens, you are not alone. Bye-bye.